Hey, I'm glad you're here. Whatever kind of day you had today, it's over now. Anything you didn't finish can wait. Anything you haven't figured out doesn't need an answer tonight. There's nothing else you need to accomplish, nothing else you need to check off your list. And for the next little while, there's nowhere else you need to be. So get comfortable. Let your head settle into your pillow. Allow your shoulders to relax. Unclench your jaw. And if you're holding on to anything from today, just for now, you can let it go. You don't have to carry it with you until tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Tonight, all you have to do is rest. Close your eyes whenever you're ready. Take one slow, comfortable breath, and let me tell you a story. It was just after 11 when you noticed the bookshop. You had walked down the street many times before. More times if you can count, actually. You knew the little coffee shop on the corner. You knew the flower stand that opened early every morning. You knew the bakery with the striped awning and the warm smell of bread that somehow found its way onto the sidewalk. But you had never noticed that bookshop. Not until tonight. Perhaps it was because you've never walked it slowly before. Most days you were in a hurry. Walking somewhere, going somewhere, thinking about where you had just been or where you needed to be next. But tonight was different. Tonight you had nowhere else to go. So you walked slowly. The rain had started sometime earlier that evening. Not a heavy rain, just a quiet, steady drizzle. The kind of rain that softened everything around you. The sidewalk shimmered beneath the streetlights. Tiny drops of water rested along the windows of the closed shops. And every now and then, a gentle breeze moved through the trees. You pulled your coat a little closer around you, and that's when you saw it. A small wooden sign hanging above a narrow doorway. The Midnight Bookshop. You stopped. You were almost certain it hadn't been there yesterday. The windows glowed with a warm golden light, and behind the glass, you could see shelves, rows and rows of books. There was something comforting about the light inside, especially against the cool, rainy nights. You stepped closer. In the window was another sign, a small piece of paper. The handwriting was slightly crooked. It read, "Open," and beneath it, in smaller letters, "For those who aren't quite ready to go home." You smiled. You weren't entirely sure why, but somehow it felt as though the sign had been waiting for you. You reached for the door. A tiny bell chimed as you stepped inside. The first thing you noticed was the warmth. The kind of warmth that makes you realize you had been colder than you thought. You slipped off your coat. The rain continued quietly outside, and for a moment, you simply stood there. The bookshop was larger than it had looked from the street, much larger. Bookshelves stretched from the floor almost all the way to the ceiling. Some lamps rested on tables throughout the room, casting soft pools of golden light. There were rugs layered across the wooden floor. Some were old and faded, and others were thick and soft beneath your feet. And everywhere you looked, there were tiny books. Thousands of them. Old books, new books, books with beautiful covers, books with no titles at all. Some were stacked neatly on shelves, others were piled on tables, and a few looked as though someone had just placed them down, intending to return at any moment. You took a slow breath. The air smelled faintly of paper, wood, and something warm and sweet. Vanilla, perhaps, or cinnamon. You couldn't quite tell. Good evening. The voice came from somewhere behind you. You turned. An older woman stood behind a wooden counter. She wore a soft gray sweater. Her silver hair was pulled loosely away from her face, and beside her, a large orange cat was sleeping peacefully on a stack of books. The cat opened one eye, looked at you, and apparently decided you were not interesting enough to interrupt its nap. The woman smiled. You're welcome to stay as long as you can, as long as you like. You looked toward the windows. I didn't realize you were open so late. Oh, she said, we're always open when someone needs us. You weren't entirely sure what she meant, but something about the way she said it made you smile. She gestured towards the shelves. Are you looking for anything in particular? You thought about it, and then shook your head. No. Good. She smiled again. Those are usually the people who find the best books. You began to wander, slowly. There was no reason to rush. You ran your fingers gently along the spines of the books as you passed. Some titles made you curious. Others made you smile. There was an entire shelf labeled, Places You've Never Been. Another read, Things You Forgot You Loved. And tucked between two enormous bookshelves was a much smaller section. The little handwritten sign above it said, For Another Day. You stopped there for a moment. You weren't sure what kind of books belonged on a shelf called For Another Day, but you decided you didn't need to know, not tonight. You continued walking. Somewhere deeper in the shop, a clock ticked quietly. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Outside, the rain continued. You could hear it tapping gently against the windows, and as you walked, you began to notice something. The thoughts that had been following you all day were becoming quieter. The things you needed to remember, the things you needed to do, the conversations you had replayed in your head, the questions you didn't have answers to. They were still there, somewhere, but they didn't feel quite as important anymore. Not here, not tonight. You turned another corner and discovered a small table. On it sat a teapot, 2 cups, and a handwritten note. Help yourself. You lifted the lid. A gentle cloud of steam rose into the air. The tea smelled like chamomile and honey. You poured yourself a cup, wrapped both hands around it, and stood quietly for a moment, feeling the warmth against your palms. You took a sip. It was perfect. Not too sweet, not too hot, just warm. You carried the cup with you as you continued exploring. Eventually, you found the back of the shop. There was a fireplace there, a real one. The flames moved lazily behind a small iron screen. Crackle, pop, crackle. Beside the fireplace was a chair, a large, impossibly comfortable-looking chair, and next to it, a small table. You walked closer. On the table was a book, just one. You picked it up. There was no title on the cover. You turned it over. Nothing. You opened the first page. Blank. The second page? Blank. You flipped through several more. Every page was empty. You frowned. From somewhere behind you, you heard the bookshop owner. Ah! You turned around. She stood at the end of the aisle. You found it. Found what? She nodded toward the book. Yours. You looked down at the empty pages, but there's nothing in it. Not yet. You looked back at her. She smiled. That's the nice thing about tomorrow. You waited. It hasn't been written yet. For a moment, neither of you said anything. She nodded toward the chair. Sit. And so you did. The chair was even more comfortable than it looked. You settled back. The fire crackled beside you. Your tea rested on a little table, and the blank book sat quietly in your lap. Tomorrow hasn't been written yet. You like that. Maybe tomorrow would be busy. Maybe it would be wonderful. Maybe it would be completely ordinary. You didn't know. And for once, you didn't need to, because tomorrow wasn't here yet. Tonight was here. This chair was here. This fire was warm. The rain was gentle. And right now, everything was okay. You closed the book and placed it on the table. Then you leaned your head back against the chair. Your eyes felt heavier now. The kind of heavy that feels good. The kind that comes with when your body finally realizes it doesn't have to keep going. You listen to the rain softly tapping against the window. You listen to the fire crackle, pop, crackle. You listen to the quiet ticking of the clock somewhere far away. Tick, tock, tick, tock. There was nowhere you needed to be, nothing you needed to solve, nothing you needed to prepare for. The bookshop asked nothing of you. It simply let you stay. After a while, the orange cat appeared. You weren't sure when it had left the counter, but now it stood beside your chair. It looked at you, then at the empty space near your feet, apparently deciding this was acceptable. The cat curled itself into a small ball on the rug. Within seconds, it was asleep. You smiled. Maybe the cat understood something you were still learning. When you're tired, you rest. No guilt, no explanation, no need to earn it. You simply rest. You let your eyes close just for a moment. The rain continued outside. The fire continued to burn. The clock continued its slow, steady rhythm. And somewhere near the front of the shop, the woman quietly turned the page of her book. Nobody disturbed you. Nobody needed anything from you. Nobody was waiting for an answer. For tonight, you had done enough. You had thought enough. You had carried enough. And now you could rest. You weren't sure how much time had passed when you opened your eyes again. Perhaps a few minutes, perhaps an hour. The fire had burned lower, the rain had softened, and the book was still beside you, waiting. You reached for it. The cover felt smooth beneath your fingers. Tomorrow hasn't been written yet. You smiled. Then you noticed something tucked inside, a bookmark. You pulled it out. There were 5 words written across it. You can come back any time. You held it for a moment, then slipped it into your pocket. You stood, put on your coat, and walked slowly towards the front of the shop. The woman looked up from her book. Leaving? You nodded. I think I'm ready to go home now. She smiled. Good. You glanced back towards the shelves. Will you be here tomorrow? The woman thought for a moment, then smiled. If you need us. You weren't sure whether that was a yes, but somehow it was enough. You opened the door, the little bell chimed, and stepped outside. The rain had stopped. The street was quiet. The pavement still shimmered beneath the lights. You looked up. The clouds had begun to move apart, and somewhere between them, you could see the moon. You took a slow breath. The air felt clean, cool, peaceful. Then you began walking home, slowly. There was no need to rush. Tomorrow would come when it was ready, and when it did, you would need it, but not yet. Right now, there was only tonight. A quiet room, a comfortable bed, a soft pillow waiting for you, and a wonderful feeling of knowing that you had done enough for one day. So let yourself rest now. Whatever is waiting for you tomorrow can wait a little longer. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to prepare for it. You don't have to figure it out tonight. Tomorrow's pages are still blank, and that's okay for now. Let the day fade away. Let your thoughts become quieter. Let your breathing become slower, and allow yourself to drift. You are safe here, done enough, and now you can rest. Good night.